Of course, typically, as you say, he hasn't traveled to, the continent. And also, we're wondering if he will then make his trip to South Africa to play golf, as some have suggested, that maybe it's time to tee off with President Cyril Ramaphosa. But of course, this is a crucial encounter as you think about the fact that when you look at some of the contents of this particular meeting are just as important as, the pleasantries, one could put it, between the two men, with very questions that are being asked to say that can a trade deal save this particular relationship? And as we're seeing some movement there, Sophie, perhaps we bring you into this conversation. When you look at the composition of, the delegation of South Africa, you are looking at an international relations and cooperation minister, a minister in the presidency, trade and industry and competition. You're looking at agriculture, and it speaks to the different sectors and the different conversations that are likely to take place during this meeting.
You are correct. It's the plan and the strategy around what you are going to engage on, as we see that GCIS photographer standing there. When you look at the visuals, it's about the plan. You have the Minister of International Relations, because it's all about foreign policy. It's a relationship with another country. It's not a relationship of a province with another province. It's not a national issue. Therefore, you need the Minister of Foreign Affairs, in this case, South Africa Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamola, who has been working in terms of his department. We saw the DG, Zane Dango, a few months ago going to the United States of America, addressing the UN about the G20, then moving to Washington to engage the officials, the technocrats in Washington. And both the White House and the State Department were represented. You then have the Minister of State Security. The Minister of State Security is very, very important because it looks like something is happening there, maybe Sherwin.
Thank you for that, Sophie. Let's go to SABC News reporter Sherwin Bryce. Please, Sherwin, we're looking at pictures, what appears to be a man on the ground in distress. What's going on?
One of the honor guard members just fainted. Maybe dehydration, we don't know. They've picked him up, he's walked off. It's actually quite cool in Washington, D.C. today. It's a rainy day, so that's kind of a surprise because normally that happens in the heat. But they'll take him away. There's a medical unit on the campus here at the White House, so he'll get some immediate attention here, but obviously will be removed from the lineup ahead of the arrival of South Africa's president. I'm stuck behind a barrier. It's difficult for me to see, but it looks like he's up and walking. I'll give him some water, and I'm sure he'll be as right as rain pretty shortly. But he's got a lot of people around him taking a look at him as we wait here in the rain for the arrival of South Africa's president. I just got a wink from Vincent Mokoena to say that wheels are rolling, which means the president's entourage, his convoy will be arriving at the White House shortly. I do believe we're minutes away. And of course, he's accompanied through the streets of Washington, D.C. From his hotel by a police escort, blue light escort. So it should be a matter of moments. I see someone rushing over there now with a bag, a medical person, most likely to give that individual some aid, the aid that he requires. We'll certainly try and get an update on that for you when we're able to move a bit more freely in the moments ahead. Right. I hear sirens, which means they're close.
Okay, Sherwin, we'll stay with you then as we wait for the arrival of President Ramaphosa at the White House. And as we do that, is there any telling what the feeling is among the people in the Trump administration ahead of this meeting? Are they looking forward to the interaction?
Well, it's difficult for us to estimate as to exactly what the posture will be, but what we're informed by is who's going to be in the room. And so this is a very high level, right, in terms of the USA team. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, is going to be in the room. Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, will be there. Howard Lutnick will be there from Commerce. Susie Wiles is the White House Chief of Staff. Elon Musk will be there in his capacity as a special government employee. And of course, the founder of the Department of Government Efficiency, Dr. Masad Boulos, is a senior senior advisor for Africa, a senior advisor to the president on Arab and Middle Eastern affairs. And I think the sentiment, the broad read that we can offer our viewers at this juncture is that we are seeing a narrowing of the positions in terms of the geopolitical divides that have framed this relationship in the last number of months, be it on Gaza. We are seeing a growing frustration within the White House in terms of the ability of the Israeli government to end the war, to bring it to a conclusion. And we are also seeing greater alignment between the South Africans and the United States on getting Russia and Ukraine to the peace negotiating table. These have been imperatives for South Africa for a long time. The question is, can they get greater alignment in terms of the two-state solution? Can you see greater consensus in terms of ending the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza, some 2 million people that have been holed up in a war, displaced from time and again, homes are destroyed, their future uncertain. This is a huge undertaking for the South Africans. But in addition to that, also the economic partnership, the economic relationship is very important. And what you'll hear from the South African delegation is really impressing the benefit of the relationship, not just to South Africa, but also the mutually beneficial relationship, is how Ronald Lamola described it to me in our conversation yesterday. I'll tell you this, Tembekile and Bongiwe, Sophie, everybody, I know you've been waiting for this moment. I see police, motorbikes pulling up at the front. We are moments away here. We are moments away now from the arrival of South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, and he is likely to be greeted by the President of the United States in just a short moment. You should, within moments, see his convoy pull up here on a very grey day, a very grey, rainy day in Washington. But that, of course, is of no consequence if you're from Africa, as you well know. Little rain is an African blessing, and don't we need a little bit of that in this relationship moving forward?
And the question then, Sherwin, will be, does the South African delegation have a deal ready to present to Donald Trump?
Yes, I think they're very well prepared for any alternative, right? We've always been talking about if AGOA goes, then what? And I think they're primed for that. You've heard it from various interlocutors, including Vincent Mokoena, who was very clear that they have some alternatives, right? This is about a bilateral relationship that must continue, whether the free trade agreement that has benefited sub-Saharan Africa for the last 20 years comes or goes. There's not a lot of talk within the US Congress, not a lot of talk within the current administration about the extension of AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. So one has to be positioned for any alternative, and my sense is that Parks Tau has been in a granular way dealing in terms of the options that they will be presenting today. And that conversation is going to be led by Parks Tau and Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. I'm just looking over my shoulder, still not seeing President Ramaphosa's car, but I'm sure he'll be arriving very, very shortly.
All right, Sherwin, hang on for us. We're supposed to go to another correspondent, Kate Fisher, part of the SABC team. For those of you joining us, covering this working visit by President Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House, as Sherwin's been reporting, the arrival of the South African delegation, in particular President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will be greeted at the door by US President Donald Trump, is now imminent. And Kate, you've been watching a lot of the conversation around this visit in the United States. It is a significant visit with the focus on trade, because total US goods trade with South Africa in 2024 sat at about $20.5 billion.
Yeah, it's a really important trading relationship for both countries. For the US, South Africa is its biggest trading partner on the sub-Saharan continent, and one that it would like to keep developing. It's just we don't know yet whether the Trump administration is going to renew the African Growth and Opportunity Act. It was last renewed 10 years ago in 2015. The Trump administration seems to be suggesting, with its very isolationist trade policy, that it may be difficult to renew that, and that's going to be one of the major points of discussion, no doubt, between Cyril Ramaphosa and Donald Trump when he eventually arrives here. As you say, he's running now over 30 minutes late. And I think we did hear
Kate,
from
hold on
the
for me,
US
Kate.
State
Kate, I'm
Department
going to cut you off because we're just seeing the arrival of President Ramaphosa. Sherwin, over to you.
Greeting President
All right, we are just positioning our camera. We should see the President of South Africa emerge. Much delayed arrival here. It was due to happen about 34 minutes ago. And there we go. My visual is a bit blocked here, so I'm trying to...
And the pair of persons going.
So the president didn't arrive? Trump didn't meet him? Oh, it was President... Oh, okay, confirmed. President Trump did meet President Ramaphosa. My apologies for that, guys. Everything just got blocked from the angle that I was positioned at. But President Donald Trump and President Ramaphosa in the White House now, and they will sign a visitor's book. They will go into a luncheon with all their delegates, parts of their delegation in the room, and then they'll go to the Oval Office.
And of course, showing audibly a fly on the wall as these developments, continue to be played out for everybody to see. And this is a moment that the business community, not only in South Africa, but also in the United States, will be waiting with bated breath to see as to what comes out of here. But someone else, of course, we're watching the story with is Sophie Mokoena, our international news editor. And Sophie, this is, of course, a big moment also when it comes to global issues.
There is Anton Rupert. There he gets in, and you can see ministers, you can see Steenhuisen, you can see other people coming in. Now this is the delegation. Immediately after the president did wave to the journalists standing side by side with President Trump. They are now inside. We saw the delegation now following that order in terms of the visit. So they are inside now, as Shawen pointed out. I think where he is, it was a bit difficult for him to see, because in these events you find that the media, the journalists, because we are not carrying cameras, we get to be positioned a bit far, so you can't see properly. Yes, our camera, Aaron Beck, was able to capture every moment because he is positioned where you have cameras. So yes, President Ramaphosa is in the house, and I think now they will be moving in, the journalists themselves. As you can see, there is Shawen. Perhaps we can hear from Shawen.
And I hope, Sherwin, you are able to hear us. We saw you in shot a little earlier on there. Let's speak about the delegation, right, from South Africa. Yesterday, we saw an upbeat President Ramaphosa, and now making their way inside. We spotted a few ministers with him there.
Yeah, the military honor guard is going to leave now. They're going to march off. They've now done their duty, welcomed the South African president. He was welcomed by the US president. My line of sight was suddenly blocked at the last moment. But as Sophie correctly pointed out, these are difficult moments, especially if you're in the press corps. There's a lot of interest around this visit, and that should be of no negative consequence to the South African delegation. They want as much attention as possible, given the goals they've set for themselves in terms of this visit. You talk about the South African delegation. Let me start with the Labour being represented here. COSATU President Zingiswa Losi, Adrian Gore of BUSA, Business Unity South Africa, the Vice President, and of course the CEO, the Group CEO of Discovery Limited. You have, you saw there just a short moment ago, Johan Rupert, the Richemont founder and Remgro chair, of course, has the ear of both Ramaphosa and Trump, very close to both presidents. Retief Goosen, Ernie Els, professional golfers. What does Donald Trump love? A lot of golf, and the golfers will be in the room. John Steenhuisen, Parks Tau, Kumbutsa and Chabeni, Ronald Lamola, the quartet of cabinet ministers that have been very engaged in briefing the president here. And then on the US side, Vice President J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Defense, Howard Lutnick, Commerce, Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, Elon Musk, special government employee, but also, seeking a business relationship with South Africa as it relates to Starlink in the main. But we're also hearing some rumors about a possible deal around Tesla. But these are the granular details that are going to be revealed after this meeting. Dr. Masad Boulos is a senior advisor for Africa and the Middle East in terms of advising the President of the United States. So all these issues on the table. You have all the brain matter in the room as it pertains to the various sectors that are of import here. And so one is really now looking forward to the Oval Office meeting, which will be transmitted live. I'm being waved at. I have to go. Thanks, guys. I'll speak to you in a minute.
All right, Sherwin, we'll let you go to that meeting there because it is an all-important moment, Megile.
Oh, there he goes.
Yes, and definitely we'll catch up with Sherwin. And remember, of course, a part of this particular moment is going to be that bilateral meeting. And also, we are going to then be having that moment where the presidents and the delegations will then be able to have that media interaction. And Sophie, at this moment, right, as we look at this, the developments here, you and I yesterday were talking about a very resolute Marco Rubio, but also coming under serious attack there from some of the members of Congress.
Yes, you are correct. When I looked at the delegation from the U.S., when his name was not there, I was like, perhaps yesterday he was bruised. It was heated. But you know what, Bongile, you would recall during apartheid, when the Liberation Organization, the ANC, was mobilizing the Americans, they had friends within the Congress. And you have what we call Black Caucus that was also supporting them, but also many members of the Congress in relation to the Democrats, including the former President Joe Biden. At that time, he was in the Senate. And therefore, you'd recall at some point in time, Begi said they must use or revive those relationships so that they can lobby the congressmen and women to push back on some of the issues. Because during the 80s, when there was a mobilization and finally there was a bill before Parliament, before the Congress, in terms of implementation of sanctions against the regime, the apartheid regime, Ronald Reagan tried to, a golfer coming in there, Ronald Reagan tried to veto that bill. It was the congressmen and women that made a point that at the Senate, this does go through. And you'd recall the former president saying, do the same now. Go back to your friends in America. Speak to them. And when I was talking to the ANC Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokoena, 2 months ago, she said they are doing just that. As we speak, they are in Vietnam, they are in China, they are everywhere, reviving the relationship, but also reviving the relationship in the United States of America of organizations and individuals who supported the struggle. So when I saw that heated exchange, it reminded me a heated exchange in the Senate when Joe Biden, as a senator, was pressing the then government or administration of the United States of America on why are you not supporting the struggle. So this time around, you saw that heated debate. Why are you only supporting whites, Afrikaners? Why you didn't even support black people, give them refugee at that time, refugee status.
And just before I let you go, Sophie, there is, of course, an interesting, person in the delegation of the United States. And you're looking at the Deputy Secretary, that's Christopher Landau there. And this is a man who received the 49 Afrikaners, and he would have engaged with them as, of course, they were right in front of the cameras, but also at the same time saying that they're going to be having meetings even post the interaction with the media. So it's interesting to see him in the room as well.
You'd recall that at that time, President Trump had just left for the Gulf region, visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. And he was accompanied by Secretary Rubio. And therefore, the deputy had to step in to receive those Afrikaners. And therefore, he spoke to them. He's got the story from them. But then you will have people who are going to push back in the room that there is no genocide in South Africa. Of course, Johan Rupert and others might say, yes, we have tensions. We don't agree on certain things and legislations, but there is no genocide.
All right, International News Editor there is Sophie Mokoena, bring us, the very latest as far as that composition of the U.S. delegation is concerned. You do have the Vice President, J.D. Vance, also being part of that, and Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is the U.S. Department of Defense, and of course, also Susie Wiles, Assistant to the President of Chief of Staff. So it's going to be quite a meeting, especially when you look at some of the issues that are likely to come up. Tembegile.